We open up Karma Free Wealth. The whole thing is all you got to do is share some content, and then the thing's going to start churning. Nobody share content. So it's like we're still at that point. It's like, okay, well, shoot, I'm just going to keep building and refining it. And now I know everything that I'm being told also, like, hey, go ahead and emerge as an industry. We've been working with Spirit Tech for like 6 to 8 years, even longer. Spirit Tech is old. But it takes that amount of time to research and develop certain technology. But then when they release, there's only one place that can come from. That was the thing about like some of the products that we had. Is like other people sell the products. Other people sell She Legit. We got the best. We always going to have the best. But other people sell She Legit. Nobody sells a Vector Equilibrium. It's not available anywhere. It's not even a thing that you can easily buy. It's about whether you can hope to get one, like a Monet or one of these paintings, right? It's like people are waiting in line to actually get them. What is that? That's value. That's prestige. But see, that's all a part of the game. So for me, for sure, it's like I scoff at the game, but realize the necessity of its needing to be played. You see what I mean? It's like you got to go back into the matrix. Damn, you serious? It's almost like you go into a high vibration, you turn on your third eye, but then you're on the bus next day. You're just like, damn, you serious? Exactly. That's how flexible you need to be in this. If you're on the wait list for a Vector Equilibrium, what that means is that when Vector Equilibriums are placed into the public, then they will then be available on the website. Right now, there's 30 Vector Equilibriums in the world. Also, every Vector Equilibrium is registered. It also is in an array, and that means that Vector Equilibriums are configured in a way where each vector is dependent upon the other vector. So all the configurations are the same, and that's what makes each Vector Equilibrium unique. And so what we decided to do, again, because we got about 20 Vector Equilibriums that'll go out in this project. Hopefully we do completely go through all the NFTs. About 30 of them. So that's how many are done. And now we're in the process of actually creating more, but they are time consuming. It's just one of those things when you're really working on something. We've tried to shave down how long it takes to put one together, but it is what it is. So that's what that means, that the moment that they become public, along with the cosmic clocks, then they will go into the store and then you can purchase them. They still will be registered. We've been kind of thinking about if we wanted to put them all on the blockchain or at least make that an option, because what that does do is it also opens up your ability to be able to liquidate it. So let's say, for instance, if generally, let's say you buy, I don't know, a PlayStation 2 or 3 years later, the best that you can do is probably put it on eBay and try to sell it there. Versus if we put Vector Equilibriums on the blockchain, it does mean 2 or 3 years later, based on the value of that asset, you would be able to list it rather easy and redeem it. A much more easier and for probably a greater value than you would with something like PlayStation. So that is something that hydrogen has to be forced into water, because hydrogen wants to just go to the top part of the atmosphere. That's why we always say roll with the winners. It just wants to go high. So because of your containment unit, though, when you drink it, it will go and become digested by your system and then actually become a fuel source for the body. So that's it for hydrogen. I'm not going to... Hydrogen is big. You can check out the articles. You can see where the articles are linked to, and you can check out all of the .gov sites that have already done their research on this and the potential of what it's capable of doing. So then we move finally into the Vector Equilibrium. So now I was like, okay, so we need to get this technology into the palm of the hand. That's the age that we're living in now. And so I started on this project of visualizing what that would be and doing, all the computations that are necessary, dialing into the geometry, the elements, the formation. And in the end, which is but the beginning, the Vector Equilibrium was developed. Now, I know that this may be tough to be seen, so I'm just going to put it here on the counter, and maybe Destin will be able to zoom into it. But what the Vector Equilibrium is it's, first of all, from the composition of the material in itself is conductive. The actual poles that you see here are these what you see as gold magnets. They are configured in a pattern that allows there to be a spiral taking place magnetically. And then inside of each array, there is an element or a noble element placed inside of the array. What does this do? So when you're holding this, so just holding it, and you're having a speech, or you're meditating, or you're doing really anything involved in energetics, what you begin to feel is you begin to feel that the energy from the elements that are embedded within this cuboctahedron are going into the hand that you're actually holding it in. Okay? So that's what this does, is it not only amplifies the energy field within the body, like basically allowing the blood to circulate better, but it also feeds the energy of the noble elements that are within the cuboctahedron into the hand. So this device also, it is, how can I put it? It is there's a need for it to be cleaned, right? So we talk about astral hygiene in this case. So because of the composites and things that it consists of, what it's doing is it's also kind of purifying the field. But then when it does that, it will accumulate what you would call like the negative part of the field. And that's why we kind of suggest that this is like a personal item, that this is not something that you kind of just give to your friend, like, yo, check it out. The cuboctahedron or vector equilibrium that you have is like basically uniquely identified to you as you start interacting with it. So it becomes familiar with your energetic field, and then it cleans consistently the energetic field, kind of like a air purifier. And so when you're not using the vector equilibrium, you then place it into the storage container, which is here. And when I place it into this storage container, what it's going to do is it's going to then begin to charge it. So you'll feel like when it snaps in place, it'll snap in place, as that one did. And then you'll see that, you'll see the position of where those triangles are, and then you snap it into place. And in that, as you can see, it's a magnetically contained field. And what it's doing now is then it's just wiping off and balance. Well, it's actually balancing, because there's no energy. Energy is interesting. It doesn't actually go anywhere. It's just how it's configured. So it reconfigures that energy, and then it puts it into alignment. Each cuboctahedron or vector equilibrium, overall it's called the vector equilibrium, have serial numbers because vector equilibriums are actually an array, and that's what this is on the top. And maybe we can zoom in a little bit on that. I'll hold it here for a minute. Maybe the black one will be better, but what you're looking at on the top is actually the bandwidth pattern as a metamaterial of the bandwidth spectrum that the cuboctahedron governs. So basically, the bandwidth spectrum is an entire spectrum, so it's full bandwidth to be able to deal with every situation that would take place in this reality and the realities adjacent to this reality. And so because of that, though, every cuboctahedron is actually unique. They cannot be by themselves per se. When you configure an array, you don't have just one unit. So this is like when you have Wi-Fi, the moment you get to a certain distance, there needs to be another one. It needs to repeat that vibration or frequency in order for there to be a matching of communication. So right now, there are 30 or so cuboctahedrons that are in an array. So they were all configured together to support basically each other. And when we launch, then those 30 cuboctahedrons are, as we know, as their IRLs inside of our NFTs. And then also, depending on what happens, then they'll actually be on the site and available there. But we will also continue to register them because it is important, for the individual owners to know that that cuboctahedron, until you sell it, if you may, or get rid of it, is registered to you. So we know basically who has the cuboctahedron that is emitting that particular part of energy on the array. And then you have the registration, which is here. You receive this card, And the card will have the QR code that links to the registration of your cuboctahedron. So that way also in the future, because as we said, these are non-fungible in that respect. You have an IRL non-fungible that is registered to you. And if you wanted to do something with it, like liquidate it for whatever reason, maybe you go through an experience and you say, okay, I need to collect however much they end up becoming worth in the future, then it would be different than something else you generally purchase where it's like, okay, now I'm going to send it to eBay or whatever. It probably would have a higher value than it had when you initially acquired it. And there's a rarity here because we have to produce these from scratch here. So in conclusion, what I'm saying is that being able to go through this process of creating this gave me the ability to actually create this. And while this didn't actually make it yet to market, there is still plans on ultimately making this about the size of this. Friends can't use, but what about close family? Okay, so thank you for clarifying that, Willie. So it is better for, and this is just something that we have dialed into. I can't tell people what to do, but what we notice with the vector equilibrium is that it's really like a personal object. Like there's certain things in your life that you may have as a personal object. Let's say like that was his hat or that was his cane. And so it's something that for sure it would be passed to someone when let's say if you decide to glide up on it, you say, hey, my son, here, you can have my vector equilibrium. And by all means, I'm sure that there would be some form of still energetics that they would feel from you from this object. But letting a lot of people put their hands on it is very similar to allowing a lot of people to put their hands on like a crystal that you have personally. And, you sleep with this crystal, it's on your chest or whatever, and you got this relationship with this crystal. Now, everybody's holding this crystal, following this crystal, touching this crystal. It's just not a good idea because these things, they have a tendency to strengthen themselves once they can create a form of basically strengthen themselves once they can create a form of what they're interacting with. But then when something else interacts with it, it will have to then change that form. And so if it's something about it's called basically we just call it the array. And you can see this with magnets. It happens more with the poles. It's like the poles start to weaken or change, especially with magnets. We've noticed. I'm gonna pop that thing on. We've noticed with magnets that the poles will weaken when you just allow a lot of people to come in contact with it versus when you actually just come in contact with it, the poles either stay the same or they get greater. And you can tell that by how strong it begins to snap back into the device. So what are the metrics that are actually controlling this? We can only say it's because the pattern is being disturbed. So we're not also saying that, well, somebody else has kind of got negative energy or bad energy, so they're messing it up. We're just saying that they're kind of confusing it as to what bandwidth that it's specifically programmed to. And so hopefully that makes it a little bit more clear why we are like, maybe this is something that you want to keep as your own personal thing. Got to have something for yourself.